Hello everybody, and welcome to another session of this self-knowledge course. Today we're going to talk about evolution, involution, and revolution, which is a subject specifically related with the wheel of samsara. So let's get started. So we said in lesson number 5 that the origin of all life is what we call the Absolute. The Absolute existed before everything else and will exist after everything. The Absolute is beyond time, is beyond matter, is beyond what is and what is not. The Absolute is a concept that we cannot understand with our mind, but we can just, for now, simply accept it as a spiritual realm or the origin of everything. We also said that the Absolute, during the creation of the universe, casts an infinite number of sparks or essences that will compose the creation into the different galaxies and solar systems in order to populate those planets, in order to create those planets. So here on the planet Earth, today we have the physical body of a human being, but before that we had the physical body of an animal, that of a plant, and that of a mineral.
The laws of evolution and involution are the mechanical axes of all nature and have nothing to do with the intimate self-realization of the being.
Our essence travels throughout the different kingdoms. So when we first entered the wheel of samsara, we came in through the mineral kingdom. And our physical form at that time was that of a mineral, either a metal or a stone. Now, this concept of speaking about a mineral having an essence or spiritual life might be hard to understand, because we have this concept that stones are objects that do not have life. The point is that we need to open our minds and to understand that we don't have the answers to everything. And a stone, for example, is composed of millions of atoms. Atoms of iron, of gold, of silver. And those atoms have movement. The electrons are constantly moving infinitely for thousands and millions of years. So the movement of those atoms, of those electrons, shows us that there's some activity inside that stone, inside that mineral, that metal. So in a way, there's an intelligence animating and giving form to life in that aspect. Think about coal, for instance. After millions of years, coal can become a diamond. Now, how is it possible that a stone can transform into another? There is certainly an intelligence there. And although the physical process is just that of pressure, there has to be something else beyond that enables those atoms to be organized in such a way as to form a pattern. Or think about quartz, for example. How is it possible that quartz can grow? Millions and millions of years and quartz stones grow. And after thousands of years, then that essence can move into the next kingdom. So it could be a flower, it could be a tree, it could be grass, it could be plankton, basically any organism that we could classify as a vegetable, as a plant. And we can all see how this helps sustain life in planet Earth. So in being a plant, in being a mineral, that essence not only is learning something, but it's also helping the planet to develop, to grow, and to exist, so that it can later harbor human life. So it's a service that that essence is doing. Then later on, after thousands of years of taking the physical body of a plant, of different plants, this essence will move into the animal kingdom. It will be either an insect or an animal. So it could be a cat, a dog, a wasp, a lion, a tiger. Now, not all essences will take the same physical form. Remember in lesson 11 when we talked about the rays of creation, and that each and every single one of us belongs to a particular ray of creation, right? So, if my ray of creation is that of the moon, I will only take the physical form of minerals, plants and animals that correspond to the ray of the moon. And if I belong to the ray of the sun, the same thing. I will only take a mineral, vegetable or animal expression that corresponds with the sun. And the expression that our essence could take will depend also on our spiritual level. If we are an essence who's never achieved self-realization, then we will never be an eagle, for instance. We will never be a lion, a tiger, because such animals, as we can see, they are like the kings of nature. They are at the top of the food chain. So maybe if we were a lazy essence, an essence that never achieved self-realization, that never woke up, then we will simply be an insect, a small animal, which of course is not less important than the lion or the eagle, depending on the level of that particular essence, on how spiritually important she is, then the physical expression she will have will be based on that. So after we've gone through the animal kingdom, we moved into the final stage where we can take the physical expression of a human being. And as human beings, we receive 108 existences, 108 lives. And during those lives, of course, we develop the ego, we make mistakes, but we also have the chance to learn something, to look for the way, to wake up, to achieve self-realization. Now, thus far, we've been making progress thanks to the law of evolution. We evolved from the mineral kingdom into the plants and then animals. And then we became human. It was all mechanical. It wasn't like we really needed to do much of an effort. It was an evolution. We achieved a higher state. So following on this, we could think, okay, then logically the law of evolution should help us to achieve a higher state, let's say that of an angel maybe, that of a divine being. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Because the law of evolution can only help us thus far. We need to make the revolution of the consciousness. We need to wake up. We need to eliminate our defects. We need to work upon ourselves. We need to meditate. We need to transmute our energies in order to wake up. But if we do not do any of those things, which we have a right, because as humans, we have free will. We have a choice to either look for the awakening or not. And both choices are fine. But when our existences are over, the cycle of 108 existences is finished, then we will enter into the law of involution, where this time we will go in the opposite way. We will take the physical expression of an animal, later on that of a plant, and finally that of a mineral.
If evolution exists in every living species, likewise, so too does involution.
Now this process of involution has a purpose. The purpose is to eliminate our ego. As humans, we have to eliminate the ego. Remember that the ego is what separates us from God, from divinity. But if we do not eliminate the ego, then nature has to do it for us. So, let's say that I was a person whose psychological characteristic was that of lust, of a person who lived his sexual life in an uncontrolled manner, who abused his sexual organs. Then, as I enter into the law of involution and become an animal, the physical expression that I will have will correspond to that. So, Gnosis teaches us, and actually this is a concept that can be found throughout many different esoteric schools and religions, we will take the physical expression of a pork. This is an animal that clearly represents aspects of gluttony, violence, lust. It is the most violent animal when it comes to reproduction. If we see an eagle, for example, it represents glory, triumph, success. Or a lion, the king of the jungle, right? So we can see a contrast here between animals that correspond with evolution and animals that are strictly related with involution. And so Gnosis teaches us that for this reason it is not good to eat pork. It has nothing to do with trichinosis or any of those diseases that we could get by eating this meat. It is more related with spiritual aspect. When we eat pork, in a way, since that animal is in the process of involution, by eating it, we will be assimilating a certain energy that will only serve to feed our egos, that will serve to give our physical body a negative vibration. Other animals include, not all of them, but certain dogs. There are dogs who are jealous, for instance. Why is that? Well, we can see that that dog is the physical expression of an essence that, as a human, was a very jealous person. But since he or she failed to eliminate that ego of jealousy, then now, as an animal, it still has that behavior. There is an ego of jealousy that's in the process of involution. Now, then the essence moves into the next stage, which is to take the physical expression of a plant. But since nature has already eliminated a lot of the ego, as the essence was on the animal kingdom, then it no longer has a density as to have a physical body here on this three-dimensional world. So, what I'm trying to say is that the plants that are sort of devolving have a physical expression, but not here. They have a physical expression in what we know as the underworld, or as hell, the inferno. So down there, yes, there are plants, and so those plants are plants that are devolving, but they are not so dense as to crystallize here on the physical world. And the same thing with the mineral kingdom. Such stones or minerals do have a physical expression, but not here, rather in hell, in the underworld, in the inferno. So, through the process of involution, all of the egos are eliminated by nature. The essence doesn't have to make any effort, but it is a process that involves suffering. So that is why all religions advise us to try as hard as we can, as best as we can, to avoid going to hell, to avoid going into the process of involution, because such process takes thousands and thousands of years, and it is not pleasant. So you may be asking me, what is hell like? What does it look like? Well, in Norse mythology, hell was represented as a cold place, a place where there was tremendous cold, and that it was ruled by beings that froze everything. In Christianity, hell is represented as a place where there's a lot of fire and where there are a lot of demons and entities who are cruel. In Dante Alighieri's Inferno, we get a grasp of hell divided into 9 realms where the souls drown constantly in fire over and over again. Other traditions tells us that in hell an essence is dismembered every single day over and over again. So clearly what those allegories or stories are trying to indicate us is that hell is not a place where we want to be. It's not a place where we want to go. It's a place which involves suffering and pain. So for us to have an idea of what hell is like, think about one of those days where we feel extreme anger, where we feel frustrated about something, where something happened and we just feel incredibly angry and have a desire for vengeance. Gnosis teaches us that that particular psychological state that we have is a small glimpse of what we would feel for an eternity down in hell. Or, for instance, of being sad, depressed. It's a very negative state which we don't want to feel, right? We don't want to be depressed. So that is a glimpse as well of what hell is like. In hell, those states will be multiplied by the thousands. Or maybe think, for instance, of a nightmare. One of those nightmares where you wanted to wake up, but you couldn't. You were sort of trapped in your own nightmare. That is sort of giving us an idea of what we are going to feel, what we're going to live through if we go to hell. But even so, the process of going to hell will not last for an eternity. Again, it only lasts depending on how dense our egos are. So the process of involution, the process of going to hell, it's just so that our essence can have its egos eliminated by nature. So after, let's say, 5,000 years, finally the essence has reached the mineral kingdom and is finally freed from all the egos. At that point, she gets the chance to enter again into the scale of evolution. And she will go and become again a mineral, a plant, and an animal. She's no longer in hell, she's living here on this three-dimensional world. So after going once again to the process of evolution, this essence will be a human once again. And we'll have the chance to make a revolution of the consciousness. But if this essence does not, then it will again enter into involution. And so this cycle, this wheel, this turning, will repeat for a total of 3,000 times.
The ego can only be destroyed, annihilated in two ways. First, through conscious work on and within ourselves, here and now. Second, in the infernal worlds, by means of involution, passing through frightful sufferings.
If after those 3,000 times the essence did not achieve self-realization or awakening, it would go back to the Absolute. But as an elemental, as a creature of nature who has some knowledge, who has some experience of going through hell and pain and suffering, but without mastery, without the real power that can come as a result of waking up. Contrary to that, those essences that, as humans, follow the path of self-realization, the path of awakening, and achieve mastery and become enlightened, they have a chance to go into the Absolute. Now, some essences achieve self-realization and become masters, but instead of living and going to the Absolute, they decide to stay in order to help humanity. Such essences receive the title of Bodhisattvas. These essences cannot live knowing that humanity will be left here. Thousands of millions of beings are going to be left stranded here. So they stay. Sometimes they choose to be born again and teach the people, teach humanity a message of awakening, so that others can follow the path of self-realization, the path of the revolution of the consciousness.
Whoever wants to develop all their latent possibilities to become a human must enter the path of the revolution of the consciousness.
So, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you liked this lesson, and I will see you next time. Take care.